Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our council meeting for Monday, May the 14th. It is now 10 o'clock and I'll call the meeting to order. Has everybody had an opportunity to overlook the agenda? Councillor Hibbs.
Agenda looks good. I would move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And next up is the minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at our collection of minutes there? Go ahead, Councillor Jacobson.
I move we adopt the minutes as presented.
Councillor Hoekstra.
I just wanted to make a comment that it says meeting recessed at 7:30 twice in it. And I felt like it was out of order, but I don't know.
I'll have our legislative coordinator clean that up. And did someone else have some input?
That was the same thing. We spoke at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
We raised 7:30, so 31 things incorrect.
I also did have some input. Actually, sorry, that was one. So the minutes are accepted as amended. Everybody okay with that? All those in favor? Thank you. And has everybody had an opportunity to look over the council mailbox? I did have some input earlier on that suggested that we try and limit external organizations to approve minutes rather than draft ones. So perhaps if all of us can get the word out, and in the meantime, if we could limit those so it doesn't get too lengthy, and we don't end up seeing them 2 and 3 times, would be good. Go ahead, CAO Gotti.
There's also an item in the mailbox from AUMA requesting endorsement of a letter they have penned in support of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. We would ask for a motion, if you are in support of that, to allow the mayor's signature and our logo to appear on the joint letter from AUMA.
Thank you for that. Just a quick update. Our president of the AUMA, Mayor Barry Morishita, was in contact with me earlier today, and I let him know that we would be making the decision today. So I didn't want to, I expected that it would be okay, but I didn't want to speak on behalf of council without putting it here first. So. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Cresius, on behalf of council. So make a motion that council and city fully endorse the support of the pipeline.
Very good, thank you. Do you have any additional comment? If not, all those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you very much. Any other mailbox items? Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. This is back to the Lacombe Regional Waste Services Commission. I know that it is information outside of the minutes, but I was curious about the operating surplus. What do you know, like it increases by $200,000 a year. When would you access that surplus? Like, I guess I'm curious why you would keep accumulating to that degree, and what's the use?
There was a few things that that did result in that. One was some staffing issues, and then there was some surplus that we had set aside for future what's the correct terminology, Councillor? It's future reclamation of the site. And certainly there's some ongoing talks as to the amounts and if there's going to be some adjustment there. I can certainly get some greater detail if you would like. Okay. One other item there, as you went through, you may have noticed that we are going to be looking at an increase in tipping fees at West Ryde Meat Lake. What I would say is a substantial increase from our current rate, which has been in place for at least a decade, perhaps more. I think it was $18 a ton, and starting in 2019, we'll be looking at a $25 fee, and then up $1 per year after that for another 3 years. So that's not to suggest that it's an equivalent increase in requisition, that whatever that is, 25 or 30%, it's not that bad, but it still is substantial. It's 5 or 6%. Councillor Ross?
I think I'm increasing. Just in recent, there was made public that the city or town of Sutton Lake was looking into recycling, and I don't know their process, but is that something that, you know, collaboratively between other municipalities we could, does that, I don't know the details of it, so maybe you're more aware of that, the cost and so forth.
Certainly I'm aware of it. It is relatively new technology, so it's not something that we're going to be looking at jumping in immediately, but we're certainly watching with anticipation to see how things go in Sylvan Lake for sure. Councillor Holstra?
I do have one more question. Thank you, Mayor Creasy. What's our role with PAMS, that the air quality control company? Because I know we had the presentation, but did we ever make a decision about them? And then now we have this invitation to...
I believe that we did, and they are very persistent in inviting us to be members. As it sits currently, and for the past several years, we chose not to be. We do provide them with a location and obviously a service site at our water facility, which enables them to gather information to use at all their municipalities that are members. We have chosen not to be, just because we couldn't, it wasn't felt that the results were something actionable for us anyway, so we've chosen not to in the past. Any other mailbox items? Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I move that we accept the mailbox's information.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or input? If not, all those in favor? Thank you. So we got rid of our regular business, and now to move on to more exciting things. Here on behalf of the Lacombe Police Commission, we have Chairman Bob Huff and our Chief of Police, Lauren Bloomhagen. If you would care to come up to the seats, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. And on behalf of the Lacombe Police Commission, we're very pleased to present our 2017 annual report. We have a new commission member, Corey Gish, and she's unable to be here tonight. But we are certainly pleased with what is happening with the Lacombe Police Service. Within the last year, we have taken the approach of having the commission work with its strategic plan, and following that, the Lacombe Police Service follows ours. So when you see this document, and I know you've all got it and you've all had a chance to review it, you will see that we sort of work hand in glove. And this is an approach that we have been taking on the commission because we feel that as our governance role, that is the way it should operate. And I think as a result, as I said earlier, the Lacombe Police Commission and the Lacombe Police Service is very pleased with what's happening. I know your time is very precious, and I'm going to turn the mic over to our chief, who will share the important information within the annual report.
Thank you for having us today. And I'll go through the report. You do have it in front of you. I'll try and give you a quick snapshot and then leave it open for any questions you might have when we're done. As part of the bylaw, the Commission is required to report to council twice a year, so we're taking this opportunity to bring forward our annual report for information to council, and hopefully through the report you'll see that there's a number of positive things going on. This report is for 2017, and in 2017 I've described that year as a year of progressive transition, a very positive transition for the service as we moved into our new building in the fall of 2016. There was a number of changes, a number of challenges just with our new dispatch systems, radio systems, the building itself that were all very helpful and positive changes for us, and basically helped us meet some other goals that we had for the service moving forward. Our localized dispatch in 2017 proved that it was very valuable in customer satisfaction or citizen satisfaction in reducing our call wait times significantly. We haven't received any complaints on our dispatching services since we initiated localized dispatch, and our response times to calls has been significant, and we are now actually catching people as they're leaving a crime scene instead of following 45 minutes later. So for our members, that's a huge win, a huge success, and it is for the community as well. In 2017, in April, we went through basically a quality assurance audit from the province, the Solicitor General's provincial standards audit for police services, and that was a major undertaking for our staff in ensuring that all our compliances were in order and that we were doing what we say we are doing. At the end of the audit, our entire staff worked diligently to prepare that document and prepare for that process. And at the end of the audit, we met or exceeded the standards in all areas, which was very significant. We have since been a role model for the province in that area, and other agencies have looked to us for assistance in preparing their audits. Overall, in 2017, we did see an overall increase in calls for service by 18% over 2016, and a 19% increase over the past 5-year average. That increase can be part of a number of different factors. Part of it was we did have, we have over the last 5 years had some increase in our population base. We have, we are a central hub for people commuting from throughout the major centers in Alberta. But also, with part of our commitment, our self-generated enforcement has gone up significantly as well. So we are committed to increasing our level of service, the amount our members are out on the streets, and conducting various enforcement initiatives from criminal code to drug enforcement, impaired driving, and traffic initiatives. So some of the statistics you'll see throughout this report, some of the increases are not necessarily bad increases. On first glance, they might appear that way because of our increased enforcement objectives and initiatives that some of those areas did go up. So I'll explain those once I get into the statistics further down. In traffic safety, overall collisions were up by 11% over 2016. However, our traffic collisions are actually down from 2015. One of the significant factors is our injury collisions were down 27% over 2016. And that's really the area that we want to focus on reducing. Much of our work can be done with the assistance of many people in the community, including City Council, other city departments, our volunteer groups, including Victim Services, the Lacombe Community Watch Group, the Commission, of course, and other citizens that have assisted us in many other areas. In the area of human resources, one of the major changes we did in trying to raise our numbers, our number of sworn police members to fill our minimum staffing requirements, meet our schedule, have the ability to advance our training, and really increase policing services in the community. We did convert our pre-authorized 2 community peace officer positions over to fully sworn police members. Those community peace officer positions are very valuable and very important. However, our priority is policing and to meet all of our objectives and not just traffic initiatives. That was an important move for us, and to date it has been beneficial to the service. We also created the organizational support NCO, non-commissioned officer position, that was formerly the inspector's position. So that position oversees operations, and as we build on that position, we have the ability to change that from a sergeant to promoted rank, depending on the individual's skills and abilities. But we're trying to mentor and build our competencies within the organization for future attrition, future growth, or replacement. 2017, our authorized strength was 20 sworn police officers, 8 civilian support staff, and 3 casual civilian support staff. Our police population ratios were at 1 per 653, and that was 22% lower than the national average and 12% lower than the provincial average. However, we were making some headway in those areas as we modify our policing complement from the CPOs. When we go over operational highlights and calls for service, you can see in the document that our calls for service were at 7,095, which was above the previous 5 years, an increase of 18% over 2016 and 19% over the past 5-year average. There again, many of those numbers are based on increased enforcement initiatives and performance by our members. Also, throughout 16 and into 17, we did readjust our supervision along with our staffing, and that has assisted us in accountability and productivity as well. Going over the crime statistics, you can see that property crime was down 22%. And another area included in property crimes was mischiefs. And there's a lot of work that was done by our members and work within the community to reduce areas of graffiti type incidences. We had a rash of them. We did catch some individuals early in 2017. But also our thefts from vehicles, so trying to target initiatives, areas that we're seeing a higher frequency of thefts from vehicles and those types of crimes. So our response and our members being out on the streets helped decrease those. We see on impaired driving an increase of 24%, which is an alarming figure on the onset. However, we held 7 provincially funded multi-agency check stops in the community, and we targeted Canada Day, Lacombe Days, some times and dates where we would see an increase in activity within the city. We wanted to be visible, and with that those extra enforcement initiatives, it causes our numbers to go up. So had we not had those initiatives, we probably would have missed those numbers, and they were probably out there previously. We just weren't catching people for those types of offenses. Drug charges there again in our enforcement and checking individuals that maybe passing through our community in the wee small hours of the night, that they may look a little suspicious, or we get a complaint about their behaviors. Following up with not only stopping a vehicle, running their plate, but scrutinizing individuals' activities and following through with lawful searches, has netted us a number of significant drug seizures in the past year. Some of those seized drugs include fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, major street drugs, and some of the volume or quantity that we have seized is bigger than we've seen in many, many years. So the drugs we know are in our community are passing through, so we are targeting those offenses as well. The one area that kind of ran away on us was in the area of frauds at 247%. However, because of our recording, this is of the phone type frauds, we were doing some preventive lectures, communicating with various groups. It caused our reported incidents to go up. Those incidents were there before, but because we're receiving them, our numbers spiked on us. So hopefully in the next years, we're still going to continue educating our public, our seniors, on phone type frauds and scams, and we'll probably see more consistent numbers and not those significant increases moving forward. We're very happy to see that our crimes against persons were down 30%. In the previous year, we saw an increase in domestic or family violence go up by 73%, which was alarming and scary for the community as a whole. Seeing those numbers come down by 30% is significant. However, we still have to deal with that 73% increase, so there's still work to do in that area, and we are working with our provincial courts, our probation officers, as well as victim services to provide more assistance and support to victims of domestic or family violence. So it's actually quite exciting for us as an organization to have all of these new programs that we are now able to work with the varying entities on reducing some of those numbers. Break and enters were up 23%, and we did have a number of those incidents where individuals were going through a number of communities in central Alberta and committing a number of break and enters to garages, sheds, all sorts of various places. And we did work with other policing agencies targeting offenders, and were very successful on laying multiple count information or charges against individuals from areas such as Rimbey, Silver Lake, Red Deer, Innisfail, and one group was actually from Lloydminster, Alberta, that was responsible for those types of crimes. There again, our commitment to work collaboratively with our policing partners, we have increased that as well, and it is showing that it is effective. When we get into operational highlights and traffic statistics, as I mentioned earlier, our collisions were up slightly over 2016, but down over 2015. And we are going to continue to work with city management, engineering, and also with our people on enforcement of high collision locations to see what we can do. We have created a traffic analysis for the last 2 years, and we have shared that document with the city to hopefully come up with some solutions. That we've actually only got a few of our major high collision locations, so we will see what we can do to bring those numbers down in the future. But as I was saying, we are very pleased we didn't have any fatal collisions in 2017, and our injury collisions were down. There is a breakdown of our traffic enforcement, which is up over 2016 and significantly up over 2015. So within our annual report, we do identify what our last community survey results were and what the citizens of Lacombe thought should be our priorities. And we did focus on a number of those areas. We're due to do our next community survey in 2019, and the commission is currently in discussion, and we will prepare that survey so it can go up early in the year. But in this survey rotation, crimes against person, drugs, impaired driving, property crime, traffic safety, frauds and scams were all priorities that were identified, which through my report I have referenced all of those areas, and they will remain to be important parts of our future strategic plans. We outline what our priorities are, and the Commission has reviewed those with the service, and we have aligned our priorities between Commission and service on administrative, oversight, and operational priorities. We saw the benefit of bringing those together, so we're not trying to focus on separate areas of interest and not meeting in the middle. So reducing crime and victimization is one. Strengthen community partnerships, improve response service accessibility, improve traffic safety, recruit, selection, and retention of quality staff, excellence in policing, and fees for service and cost recovered. I have just presented a review of all of those strategic priorities to the Commission, and we have met all of our priorities with a few minor areas that we will consider in our next strategic plan, which will also come out 2019. So I can comment on any of those areas, but in the interest of time, I will leave those for questions you might have. As far as revenue sources go, we did take on some third-party criminal record checks that has helped us significantly with maintaining our per capita costs to the citizens of Lacombe. And actually in 2018, we were able to reduce our tax-supported costs by $48,630 by my figures. Still, the majority of our expenses are tax supported, 75%, and on our expenditures, 76% of our expenses go to staffing and wages. One of the areas that we've been focusing on is professional standards, our commitment to quality professional service within the city. We also have a mandate through the province to report all public complaints to the province on a quarterly basis. So we do follow their guidelines and the Police Act. In 2017, we had 5 complaints against members, 3 of which were resolved through mediation and would be considered very minor in nature. 1 complaint was withdrawn completely, and 1 did not meet the criteria to lodge a complaint. However, we have also followed up with reviews of our members' performance in pursuit type situations or other activities, use of force. And in one incident, one of our members was involved in a motor vehicle collision, and they were charged under provincial legislation for that. And under organizational awards, we want to recognize our staff for the good work they do. So we did have a number of people within our organization receive service awards from the province and from the service, and that is listed within the report. Our commitment to community involvement, we hold our school resource officer in high regard. That individual does excellent work, and we work closely with the Wolf Creek School Division to maintain that program. Our victim services volunteers work tirelessly and diligently, and their file load has increased substantially. And They are currently looking for volunteers. If anybody knows of any. Our Kids and Cops program will run again in 2000, or it did run in 2017 and will run again in 2018. And our Lacombe Community Watch Society, which involves block parent, citizens on patrol, and neighborhood watch, is very active and very beneficial. We have, since this report was developed, implemented our community liaison position, which will assist us in expanding our community involvement and programs that we can offer to the citizens of Lacombe. This is my report. Our report.
Councillor Ross.
Mayor Creasy, has there been any discussion or interest in looking at photo radar in a lower scaled or more, I guess, playground, school zone presence as a possible revenue, bringing it back?
So, as I stated to council before, we will not bring back any type of enforcement strategy for revenue purposes. That it has to be for public safety. So when we look at photo radar, that is a council decision. Council decides whether or not they want that. And if we were directed by council, we would definitely do a study into the benefits of photo radar, but it wouldn't be something we would take on unless there was some want or wish from council, and it was part of a strategic plan to reduce collisions and increase public safety and traffic safety.
And I also have to echo those comments. Photo radar, if it exists, has to be for the real reason, and that is the safety of people. We cannot have photo radar to generate funds. In fact, I think the province has even made a position on that.
And one of the things that if you refer to this report, that I guess speaks towards our other initiatives as well, is photo radar was discontinued in the fall of 2015, and in the 2 years following, our collisions were actually down. So whether that's hands-on visibility, enforcement, and looking at other traffic solutions, or we work with infrastructure, identifying areas. So we're going to continue monitoring and looking if we could identify a real need for that to help us reduce our collisions. We may make a request of council to make that a consideration, but we may also consider red light cameras or something as a more, but that would be part of a bigger study that we have not completed at this time.
That's what I was, my next comment was the intersection cameras.
Yeah. And I would also like to add that photo radar, if it's to exist, one has to ask the question, who's going to be the operators of it? Is it going to be third party, or is it going to be the Lacombe Police Commission and Lacombe Police Service?
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So first of all, congratulations on the audit. That's fantastic news. We like to hear stories like that. Also, a comment on the awards. I noticed that 7 of 20 members received awards of some sort or another, and I think that's also pretty outstanding. So I just wanted to make mention of those. So I do have a few questions. I noticed in the report, sometimes the terminology changes, and it's a bit maybe difficult for people that aren't very familiar with, law. So like you've got family violence, you've got family disputes, you've got crimes against persons, you've got harassment, like you've got all sorts of different terminology. And I'm just wondering maybe for next year, perhaps if you can streamline that a little bit better so that it's so that it flows through the report a little bit more clean, so that people know what it is that you mean when you say certain terms. And then I also wanted to talk about Now, it seems to me, if I recall correctly, that last year we did have that significant spike in family violence or family disputes, whatever you call it. And a part of that, if I recall correctly, you said that you had sort of looked back at some of the files that you had and sort of redesignated them to fall under that, like sort of under a more careful reading of it, that, well, maybe that did fall into this category. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correctly?
You are correct. I'm going to address the first point initially. So when we're doing a bit of a crime analysis, many times it assists us in our annual report to do a bit of analysis, and we do break it down. So domestic violence may be a little bit different than family violence. The domestic violence is a little bit higher category. So some groups and some of our other reporting through the province or other agencies, we like to see that breakdown. And then crimes against person may be general assaults. It may not be family related. It may be any other type of fight or physical violence involved incident. And then with harassment, that can fall in many forms as well, and not just particularly be family criminal harassment. So when we break down our stats, we follow some criteria, and when the Stats Canada Severity Index reporting comes out, you might see some of that similar terminology, so we follow that. And then with the reporting on domestic violence, we have made a commitment, was part of our priorities and strategies, to ensure that we are following the provincial guidelines in reporting of domestic violence, but also within our internal systems, there was some scoring changes to make that a little bit easier. So once we started complying more consistently with those scoring rules, then of course our numbers took a little bit of a jump as well. So when we saw that 73% spike, I questioned whether it was that things changed that significantly. I think reporting and recording quality was better.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm glad that you mentioned the Crime Severity Index, because that also is something that I would be very interested to know, like, you know, what the most current is, and I didn't actually notice that in the report at all. So I'm just wondering, you know, is that something that you can include in future, even if it's just the most recent that you have? I personally would find that very useful, and I think other people do like that information as well.
So once that report is released, and I actually expect it will be released by Stats Canada in the near future, I think they have sent out an advisory that within the next month it will come out. That will be reported on separately, and I believe Sheo Gowdy released those figures last year when it came out separate of this report. What I found in years past was we weren't getting our annual report out until the fall of the year, waiting on those statistics. And to us, I think this information is more than where we stand on a scale of 1 to 200. So we will release those that information. Just timing for this report.
And then just one final question, if I may be so bold. You know, thank you for this information. It is very helpful, obviously, to the community. They want reassurance that, you know, things are happening, that, you know, crime's being battled. The only, I guess, real question I have also with that is, you know, it's all well and good to see how you're doing yourself year over year, but it's also important to know, you know, how you're doing in comparison to, you know, the area. Like, you know, we can say that, you know, we know that Lacombe is a very safe community, especially compared to some of our neighbors, but it would be nice to have, you know, the proof of that, you know, within the report as well, because sometimes otherwise it's just numbers. It's, okay, yeah, we did a little bit better than last year, or we did a little bit worse than last year, but, you know, when you compare yourself to, say, some other areas, some other communities maybe in the area, then you're like, okay, wow, like we're really a really good place to live. This is a very family-friendly, safe community. I think that's important information.
And I think that's where that Crime Severity Index information is important, and it should be released with the comes out, and it will be released to all the communities and reported on. To do a comparator in our annual report, on other communities. Currently, we don't really have the analytical ability to do that, but maybe moving forward, I would definitely like to expand in that area.
Go ahead, Councillor Jacobson.
A couple of questions. First, congratulations to the chair and the chief on an excellent report, and looks like good news all around, well, mostly all around the last year. A couple of things. Do you happen to have any stats on what the actual call wait time is now with our new dispatch system?
So with our new dispatch system, we're still going through a few, I'm going to call them IT issues. And to be quite honest, we were not using the reporting ability of that system to its full advantage. However, we will be moving forward. So as we are able to collect that data through the system, then we will report on it. We know, and we can say confidently, that those wait times are down, but to give you hard numbers, I'm hoping by next year we'll be able to do that.
Okay. Just regarding the Office of Population Ratio, I know I've read this before, but I just forget. Is that, those numbers, is that for all of Canada, so all communities, whether they're 300 or 3 million, or is that only comparing it to communities of our size?
So that figure is based off of, there's a total population for Canada, total population for Alberta. You have so many police officers within that population base, and that figure is derived from that. You can do a breakdown from community to community, and depending on who, if you're comparing it to municipal agencies of size, you will come up with slightly different numbers, but they're fairly close to what you're going to see on those averages. Also, if you're dealing with an RCMP community, the statistics that you're not going to see is the associated resources. So someone within close proximity may have 10 police officers for their community. However, they aren't factoring in the provincial resources for major crimes investigations that are being funded provincially, but are not attached directly and wouldn't show up if you do that comparator from our neighbors in close proximity.
And I'd also like to add, I think one of the strengths that we have is local dispatch. And when I attend these various symposiums on crime and crime reduction, I think one of the things that we can brag about is that we have our own dispatch. And that certainly enables us to do what we are expected to do a whole lot faster. When we did not have local dispatch, the wait times were really annoying for a number of people, but now we've got them. All I'm hearing in the community is that, hey, this is much, much better. So I appreciate your question and comment, and I think we can be proud that we are working towards crime reduction, and we are doing it largely because we have our own dispatch, and I would encourage other communities to have their own dispatch as well, especially the RCMP.
So I guess I'll roll back to my last question in a minute here because I want to move on to two more, but I'll come back to it. So I did have a question though. I know you said that spike in fraud you thought was due to different reporting and that kind of thing, but anecdotally, how much of that fraud is composed of white-collar crime that you would find to be serious in nature and that perhaps we need to address operational capacity to handle that?
A very small percentage.
Okay, so it's nothing to be too worried about then.
No, and really our concern is we know those phone calls are going, or the email scams or the text scams are going out, and the most vulnerable people are usually our seniors. And we may only have 2 or 3 individuals in town that are victims that we know of. There may be more unreported, but we do have in our community victims that have suffered losses of tens of thousands of dollars to these types of scams. So we see, although the numbers of victims are low, the dollars are significant, and it is a significant blow to the individual, especially our aging population, to become victimized by these people, and they become afraid to report it. They become afraid that their family doesn't have confidence in them living on their own, all sorts of variables. So we are going to address that through community education as best we can.
So my final question kind of rolls into something I've asked you guys about before, and it's the confidence of the long-term stability of your external revenue source. I think I asked this a little while ago, and do you have any more to update on how confident you are that that is a contract that will be in place for foreseeable future?
There's no indication that it won't be. With other agencies that are doing the same type of business, even in my previous experience in Camrose, the contracts were running a decade in length. With our current newer contract, agencies have actually spoken to the chiefs of every agency that maintains a contract for that company, and many of them have been in business for 8, 10 or more years. So I feel confident that there's no mechanism for the public to attend a police agency in Alberta for strictly a criminal record check. So they have to use third-party companies, and somebody has to provide that service. So I think we're fortunate to have one of those contracts in place, and I don't see that being threatened anytime soon.
Yeah, no, we're extremely fortunate to have it. However, I guess without having to delve too deep into the numbers, how much are we relying on this revenue to fund these new positions that were all added and the ones that you're planning to add in the future?
Well, we did have some significant growth. If you look at 2018 budget, our budget actually went up. About $323,000. However, our surplus to deficit, our tax supported portion, was reduced by $48,630. So yes, we are relying on that revenue, and it wouldn't make sense for us to, I guess, implement those revenues if we weren't going to try and supplement and meet our objectives as far as resourcing and service to the community.
Again, the commission has a budget committee, and the budget committee has been tasked with the obligation to try to come up with some guidelines, some templates as how we can deal with our increases and how we can deal with any financial difficulties we could have. So your comment is right on and appreciated, and the commission is in the process of drafting a policy as to how we can work with those numbers. So it is of interest and in the concern.
And just one more comment on that. We know that that revenues of some sort are important. In policing, we have very few revenue sources. We did lose the revenues from photo radar, which was a hit. However, when we talk ethically and responsibly, these types of revenues are not associated to any type of enforcement action or don't change the way we do business in serving or protecting our citizens. So in my mind, these are sustainable revenue sources, but also responsible revenue sources. And we are in business somewhat, so there's no 100% guarantees, but I feel confident that we will have them for a while, and that if we were challenged on the ethics of receiving these types of revenues, that there wouldn't be much for challenges.
And my only concern is, and of course I brought this up to you before privately, but I have no problem with the ethics of the revenue. I would just be genuinely concerned that if they become so ingrained into the operations that if, whether it's 5 years from now or 10 years from now, that's gone, that's going to be a fairly substantial hit to cover, that's obviously going to come from council. So I would just generally hope that's part of your conversations at the commission level, and that there's contingencies and those sort of things that are discussed. So I'm just glad to hear it's on your radar.
It is, and it is a concern, and we do want to be proactive in how we're going to deal with these monies, but also very realistic that we might not always have them. And therefore, we're trying to establish a policy that will answer all of those questions. It's in the draft proposal right now, but certainly it is a real concern of the commission, and we want to come up with a policy that will answer those questions you're raising.
I'm very glad to hear it's on your radar.
Well, I just want to follow up a little bit on the conversation, is that through our provincial standards, we have a mandate to provide effective, efficient policing for the province, and as a municipality, we have our own police service. Police services are usually expense. You only see the expense side with no revenue. So there is a cost to policing, and normally that is expense driven. So I think the commission and the service have been very conscientious and diligent in trying to manage those expenses, but policing is normally not overly, the only revenues are usually through enforcement, which we're trying to not dictate our activities or let the dollars guide us in how we deliver service to the community. So it's that delicate balance, but both the service and the commissioner are very conscientious of the efficiencies.
And I also have to compliment the County of Lacombe for helping us with our SRO program, and I also have to compliment the Wolf Creek School Division for helping us with the SRO program as well. And I say those comments because those funds could certainly dry up, and I always let the county councillors know how much their monies are appreciated in terms of helping the SRO program. And the Wolf Creek Public School Division is in the process of extending the contract, and I am appreciative of them doing that as well, because I think what the SRO does is enables the staff in the schools to provide their instructional obligations, and if there's other things, then the SRO can deal with that. And so it is a win-win for all peoples.
Thank you very much for that. Just want to draw your attention to the Human Resources chart, and beside the Lacombe Police Commission is the Public Complaints Director, which I know is a special position within the commission itself. And I was wondering if you could briefly describe their role for, well, probably more so for people watching the live stream, but I think there's some confusion as to what their exact role is.
So the commission provides oversight to the service, but the Public Complaints Director position, there's a Public Complaints Director for the province of Alberta out of the Solicitor General's Department. So we are mandated to have a independent oversight individual or body for complaints. So the public can go to the Public Complaints Director to lodge a complaint against the police, and that Public Complaints Director would receive a complaint, report it to myself if it was against our members, or if it was against myself or the service, those complaints would go to the chair of the commission. That individual ensures that we follow the guidelines that are set for us. So there are reporting requirements, there's timelines in advising a complainant of the status of any complaint they may lay against a member of the service or the service itself. So that individual ensures there's oversight throughout that investigative process, and that at the end they also understand their right to appeal any decisions that might be made. So it ensures that those complainants are kept in the loop, up to date, and are well informed of the process. and what their options are if they are in disagreement with whatever resolutions come during that process. So they provide some separation from the service, also the commission, and oversight and reporting back to the province as well. And we do on both levels have quarterly reporting requirements back to the Solicitor General's office.
And also in conjunction, the public complaints person must file a written report to each commission meeting.
Thank you for that. I realize that you try and keep these charts simple and here, but that position's kind of floating out here in air, so I think it's a little unclear to people looking at this chart as to who it is they report to and whatnot. I don't necessarily have any suggestions how you can improve on it, but it's not connected anywhere here, so it just looks very odd. And it is an important role. Thankfully, it's not utilized very often. I understand, which is a good thing, but it would be nice to just to know how it relates to the commission and the police chief and the province, that kind of thing.
And if anybody wants to, and we struggle with that from a police perspective on how we maintain that separation, but still that relationship with the public complaints director. But we have brochures at our front counter. We have them in our cell block, and we have information posted on the commission website as to the role of the public complaints director, and also contact information, email addresses for them as well. So there is information available for anybody looking for that.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So this is, I guess, maybe a question process for Chief Blumengen and CEO Gowdy. For example, if you want to put traffic cameras up as a purpose of safety, because I kind of have a question when you hear through the social media people getting frustrated with motorists and pedestrians. When I've been in this town long enough that I still think pedestrians are just as guilty as being part of the situation as well, and that's where I think traffic cameras would be great to sometimes highlight not only safety, but it also resolves, picture says 1,000 words, so to speak. So if we're to move forward with that, does that have to come out as a motion from council to then have the process from the chief and the commission to have a strategy as to how they will like it to proceed, or what's the process?
So for sure, if you want to direct some investigation into whether it's automated traffic enforcement or red light cameras, I think a motion from council would get started for the commission to have a look at that and probably deliver back a recommendation for council to make a decision on.
But that would not come from the police commission or strategy from the commission as a desire. If you wanted traffic cameras, that would have to come from a notice of motion from council first. Is that how I understand it?
No, so if the police commission wanted to make a recommendation to council that they think red light cameras would be a suitable, good for the community, they are free to make that recommendation as well at any time.
Okay.
And I think looking at it in a broader scope, part of our report, our annual report, is based on our collision analysis for the year. So that is another document we do provide to the city. But I think you have to look at the broader spectrum, looking at areas, what are the solutions, and possibly look at a joint study and discussion, because some of it could be infrastructure, some of it could be enforcement based. What are we trying to address, and what are the solutions? And that may include a number of tools or techniques that we can employ, but if there was something such as a traffic light camera or photo radar, how does it fit into the plan, and is it the will of the commission, or even the needs of, would it assist the service in our service delivery? But we still have to go down that road and have those discussions. All of those areas are on our radar, and like I say, our traffic analysis is only 2 years old, so trying to figure out some of the patterns as we continue doing those studies, more light will be Sean on various areas, and we're engaged and in discussion with the city on a regular basis to address those issues that do come up. I think a bigger study would be better than just a specific tool.
So just one last item for clarification there. Because the frauds are such a drastic increase percentage-wise, nearly 400% from the previous 2 years, am I to take that just by somebody merely reporting the fact that they've been contacting you by email or over the telephone for some potential type of criminal activity, that is logged here, or those are actual ones that required investigative time from the local police service?
They require time to look into them depending on the circumstances, and some of those referred to or it used to be formerly called phone busters, but nobody uses a phone anymore. So there's a multi-agency approach to this. So in the past, we weren't actually recording some of those complaints. We were just referring people to phone busters. Now we're recording them, so we get better statistical information. We look into the source and the nature, and we do the referrals as well to the other agencies. So a little of both. We're doing a little bit more work with them, scrutinizing more, doing more analysis. So.
Okay, thank you. It just seemed an interesting one for me because I'm going to, perhaps incorrectly, but I'm going to assume that most of these are either national or international in nature. So I would expect they're probably more geared towards an RCMP type of investigation, or am I incorrect?
Not necessarily. You're correct on one level that many of them are. However, many of the victims on those types of crimes will be contacted directly, be asked to take out $5,000 and meet behind a local business. And that's happened on a few different occasions in this community and others around us. So we can't assume that all of those types of incidents are happening out of countries that are thousands of miles away, that some of those, actually some of the phone and internet scams are orchestrated out of those other countries, but they do have individuals in our communities that travel across the country, fly into Toronto and work various areas of our country and commit the crimes and actually receive cash from a person's hand. So some of it's sent by mail, but the victimization can and funds can be transferred in a variety of ways. The other area that does happen, and this is more with the some of the drug culture, is the identity thefts, creating of identification through mail documents and those types of things. We have seen significant increases in theft of mail and that type of crime throughout central Alberta. So some of those crimes are spawned from a theft and then a phone conversation or a fraud at a bank and evolve that way. So those are the ones that we have to work harder to coordinate with our other policing partners to identify the individuals. If we run the mistake of thinking they're all overseas and it doesn't matter, our victimization is going to go up.
Thank you for that, appreciate it. Any other comments or concerns? If not, on behalf of all of us, and I think the grateful community too, we appreciate the work that both the Lacombe Police Service does and the Commission for their valuable oversight. We appreciate that. I'd like to thank both you gentlemen for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come here and spend your evening with us and educating us a little bit, so we appreciate the information.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you, and sorry for taking more than 15 minutes.
Thank you very much.
So next up under bylaws, we'll move into financial services bylaw 451, and CAO Gabi will be running us through this item.
Council has previously engaged us providing direction and review on the proposed property tax bylaw for 2018. We do our tax notices to meet our statutory requirements. Certainly if there is changes that are required, we'll handle it, but it will take some difficult juggling to make it happen. So if you have questions or do want to make changes, we certainly can do that. We're supporters, right?
Councillor Ross, go ahead.
I so move that council give third and final reading to bylaw 451.
Thank you for that. Do we have any discussion? Questions? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And for the next item up, I'll call on Acting Director Piché to go through the corporate services item. Our favorite, another rescindment item, bylaw 458.
Thank you, Mayor Kersey. Yes, this is the final bylaw, 458, to repeal all of our other bylaws, or all of the rest of the bylaws that we have listed. We will have one other bylaw coming in the next month. That will be the one bylaw that repeals all bylaws so, of these repeals, and that will clean all of these bylaws up. So as I said, this this final bylaw, number 6, will ensure that the inoperative, obsolete, expired, spent, or otherwise ineffective bylaws or amendments are officially repealed. We did do first reading on April 23rd of this, and again, this is to, just for your remindment, this is to repeal 213 land use bylaw amendments. All of these amendments are from former land use bylaws that have already previously been repealed. And then there's 23 miscellaneous bylaws relating to planning and development functions that the municipality that are ineffective due to their age or nature of the bylaw. And at this time, we ask that council give second and third reading to bylaw 458, repeal of inactive bylaws number 6.
Thank you very much for that. I know everybody didn't have a chance to go through all these, but there's a couple that jumped off the page for me. There's I'm assuming that the prefix PW is Public Works. So we've got a PW 3, 4, and 5, or 4, 5, and 6 here for construction of granolithic sidewalks along certain parts of streets. That's from 1911, so I think it's a little ironic that we have been discussing sidewalks going on in our city today, some 108 years later, or 107 years later, about the very same item. And I find it particularly disturbing that even our resident engineer does not know what granolithic is, so perhaps you had time to look it up on the internet.
I did, and it's the use of granite as aggregate instead of the local material, so it would be very similar to what you see out there today.
So any, go ahead, Councillor Oakster.
I would like to give second reading to bylaw 458, repeal of inactive bylaws number 6.
Thank you very much. Any other input? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I would move that council give third reading to bylaw 458, repeal of inactive bylaws number 6.
Given there's a similar amount of input, I will call the question for third reading. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And the next item up is under Planning and Development Services. I'll call on Manager Bonnet to go through bylaw 400.15, a rezoning from residential 5 to commercial 1 for first reading.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. We've received an application to rezone properties at 5115 to 5117 51st Street from residential multi-unit dwelling district R5 to downtown commercial, which is C1. The properties are located between on 51st Street between 51st Avenue and 52nd Avenue. The lots are adjacent to both the commercial downtown and an established residential district. you'll notice that many of the adjacent properties are zoned commercial. The properties are located within DARP and fall within the mixed-use transition district. The intent of the district is to become an extension of the downtown core with opportunities for ground floor commercial development on corner lots. Prior to development, the applicant will be required to confirm the existing services can support the proposed commercial development, and if there's any improvements required to the services, that will be the developer's responsibility. There may be a requirement to consolidate the lots. That will take place at development. Administration supports redesignation from R5 to C1 as the land is immediately adjacent to an existing commercial property and will comply to the downtown area redevelopment plan. We're recommending first reading be given for the rezoning of lots 4 and 5, block 11, plan RN1A from residential multi-unit dwelling district R5 to downtown commercial district C1.
Thank you very much. So, Council, let's keep in mind this is proposed for first reading, so not a bunch of discussion is going to take place, but certainly if there's any items pertaining to this you would like clarified, you're certainly welcome to do so. Councillor Jacobson?
I move that Council give first reading of bylaw 400.15 and set public hearing for Monday, June 11th at 5:30.
Thank you very much. Sounds good. Don't see other lights on, so we'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. And we have another one in there as well. That's what we did. Councillor Connick?
Yeah, typically we split those out, one for the actual first reading and then one for the public hearing. So I'll do the one for the public hearing.
Thank you for that. All those in favor of the time and date for the public hearing? Thank you. And we do have a few members of the press here. Does anyone care to speak to anybody at the meeting? Take some time now. If not, we're going to go through reports. Choice is yours. Good. All right. Thank you very much. We say we didn't ask now. All right. Who wants to start with reports? Councillor Connick, go ahead.
My report's not there.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. On April 20th, 21st, attended the trade show and Coffee with Council. I enjoyed working with the booths of both the city and for the Rotary Club and promoting our shelter box program through that. Coffee with Council was, I thought it was quite productive and some good comments. On the 24th of April, I attended a library board meeting. We reviewed the library's plan for service for 2018 to 2021. This was finalized, will be finalized in the next few months. We had a report from the librarian regarding the trade show, and she advised that they were very pleased with the increased speed of the internet that the city is providing. And most of the programs seem to be full, and they are looking at a possibility of adding a few more. Attended the 20-minute makeover, helped clean up the area around the ball diamonds, took care of Councillor Hoekstra's contribution to that, so they've got 2 bags instead of 1. That was kind of, I thought, a nice thing for us to do. And worked McHappy Day at McDonald's to support Ronald McDonald House. This was a good fundraiser for a great cause, and half of the money went to the Terrace Ridge School, I believe, so there was also community involvement there. And on the May 2nd, attended the MPC meeting, and one item on the agenda for home-based business, and that was approved if conditions are met. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Councillor Boatson? If not, Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So my report is attached. It's lengthy because I had missed last time, so that's 1 month full. So just want to draw attention to two things. I misspoke under Cannabis Advisory Committee on April 19th, saying that the report recommendations were coming to Council on the 14th. Clearly they didn't, but I'm hoping it will be coming soon. Then under the trade show, I did make note of sort of how we do that coffee with council and coverage over the weekend. And I'm just wondering if for future, for the next year's trade show, for example, if we want to have a conversation of maybe what that looks like. I felt that perhaps in that circumstance that having all council members present for a short period of time was a bit overkill personally, and that we'd be better served, I think, having just coverage through the weekend. I think it makes it a bit more inviting to people to come in. If you're vastly outnumbering the amount of people that are coming in, it's kind of awkward. So just something to think about for next year. I'm not saying we make that change for the fall one that we do. I think that's in line with the Active Living Fair or something. Yeah. So maybe that's that doesn't work for that situation. But for the trade show specifically, we should perhaps revisit that. And then I didn't write down my community feedback in particular this time, just because I felt that so much of that was covered during the Coffee with Council session that we had at the trade show, and I assume that we will be getting a report on that at some point as well, because I know that all of the members were very diligent about writing down what they heard from people and questions and comments, etc. So I'll be eagerly looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hibbs. Councillor Glucks, go ahead.
I believe there was a schedule for working the trade show for all of us to get involved with that. So I worked 2 shifts there. So I think that we already have that covered off, or should have it covered off.
I agree, we did have that, but I'm suggesting that we stick just to that format and not also have a big grouping of us on midday Saturday. That's just my personal opinion, but I'd like us to maybe talk about that for next year.
Certainly something to discuss at a later time for sure. Thank you. Councillor Ross.
Thank you. FCSS meeting. We had the audit and our AGM with Roland Parker. And we, as FCSS discussed, well actually it was decided that the Lifeline service, the county residents, was not going to be served by Lacombe FCSS as a lack of administration hours that were available to do so. It's going to be taken on by a major company to administer. So they will not be left. It's going to be facilitated out of my apologies, I should have looked at their own minutes, but it's not going to be administered by the Lacombe FCSS. So our Coffee of Council, it was a great turnout, and I think we have to take some credit where we received both positive and constructive feedback. It wasn't, I think it was, very well attended. So obviously our committee meeting pertaining to the viability of the Volt Bus, I think it can be efficiently done to still serve the needs of our citizens in need, and to personally, I don't think it's the way the Ranger Transit delivers the Volt Bus does not meet the ridership to accommodate working to meet the connections at the downtown terminal, because it does not start early enough. I think we need to look at, as administration, as to try to interact Connex, and I agree with Councilor Connex dissolving Volt. I think we can deliver it through our own Connex service to still serve the needs of our citizens, and I think far more efficiently, and go direct to some centers, for example, the college, the hospital, the downtown terminal, to accommodate our citizens even more in a more direct way. Our Lacombe Days, still on that committee as a member at large, but It is getting more difficult for fundraising. It's at the same challenge of getting volunteers. I can foresee 2019 being scaled back because of sponsorship is getting less and volunteers are extremely hard to come by. So being practical and realistic, I can see it being scaled back from 4 days to at least 3 in 2019. We're going to do our very best to deliver what we can in 2018. We are going away from the fireworks. Strictly, it's $6,300. Having timed at some of the last fireworks displays in Lacombe, they were only 10 minutes, and I think that's not acceptable. So we're going to light shows with our stage music on both Friday and Saturday nights, and attempting that as a 2-night part with less funds that it requires. So it's yeah, I think 10 minutes for $6,300 is unreasonable. So like I say, we're looking for more volunteers and committee members because it's been the same committee for the last 5 years, and it's you tend to lose some energy. So anyways, that's my report.
Any questions for Councillor Ross? If not, Councillor Jacobson, your report.
Yeah, so I was at the Heritage Resources Committee on April 26th, and the big thing that we decided there is it's kind of trying to decide what sort of programs to put on and seminars to give to the Heritage Resource Minded in Lacombe. Is a bit kind of been like throwing darts at a dartboard in the dark, because you don't really know what they want, and they go to quite a bit of trouble to get some qualified people to come out, and they often aren't well attended. So it was suggested that perhaps we should spend some of the resources that have been allocated to us for the budget year and create an email database of those who are actively involved in the city or actively interested in that kind of thing. So so there's the data is there, it just has to be mined. So long story short, the Heritage Resources Committee this year has determined that it's going to set aside some of the money that it was given in given for grants to create this database, and that's going to allow us to very actively engage with, again, those who are heritage resource minded in the community, so we can provide resources and seminars on that for them and for exactly what they want. So that's pretty good. Obviously, I helped out 20 Minute Makeover with most of you guys. I did attend the regional sewer commissioning with all of you. I'd like to point out that I was pleased to see that Mayor Creasy could take credit for being first out of the gate with the inevitable slew of happy pipeline comments. So, I never saw that one coming. Obviously, I was at council committee last week and attended the Echo Lacombe meeting on May 10th. I'm not sure if any of you read in the paper, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was a negative letter regarding the new Echo Business Disaster Assistance Grant, for lack of, I forget what's the actual name for it. Emergency Fund. Long story short, there's a little bit of, I think, misconception around what it was, and Guy actually had the opportunity to talk to the individual who was apparently offered to rescind, but has not actually come through with it yet. But regardless, there's some good communication there regarding what this program was actually about, so that's good. And actually something I learned about was that the Echo Honey is a huge success, believe it or not. So they're almost having production issues keeping up with the demands for their order. They're going to start an urban beekeeping program here. They're looking to incorporate it in a much more full-time capacity at the school. And you listen to the fellow talk and you just really want to go start keeping bees in your backyard for about 5 minutes, honestly. So. And an Echo grant was awarded to the U-Turn Group downtown to upgrade some lighting in their facility. So that's what I've been up to for the last 2 weeks.
Thanks, Councillor Jacobson. Glad to see you're paying attention with the regional wastewater thing. Appreciate that. Councillor Hoekstra.
Okay, my report is there. Sorry. My report is there. I tend to get mine in on time, so I don't report everything that happens later, but I'll bring you up to speed with that. 2 very heavy days, April 30th and May 1st. I spent 4 hours in board training with the chamber in the evening on April 30th. Very interesting. just learning about the Alberta Chambers of Commerce and time well spent as a group. And then on May 1st, we spent the whole day in Camrose on behalf of the Lacombe Foundation. Camrose is a community that's actually marketed itself to appeal to seniors, and I was kind of curious about whether Lacombe will be that community now that we have a new seniors facility coming shortly, and we hope to have a new lodge. So it was neat to visit all the different types of housing that there is for seniors, so that was a good time. You know, my comment about Doug Griffiths, if you've ever heard him speak, it's like you kind of have to be on, turn your brain up. It was right after lunch, so it kept us awake with Doug. Yeah, I went to the commissioning ceremony as well, and yeah, it was a classy event. That was well done. The committee meeting too, I attended that, and I've had a delightful amount of community response to my support of the Bolt bus. So I'm encouraged that the citizens are listening and they're watching and they care about what we do. And I was thinking of creating a spreadsheet of the pros and the cons of how many citizens contact me. So that's kind of been a fun thought regarding that. But that's my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Councilor Hoekstra? I'll briefly go through mine. I won't go through the similar events that a bunch of you already went through, down to the Central Alberta Christian High School sod turning, an additional wing there that will house the industrial arts. And I had some questions about what the cranes were doing over there in the residential and whatnot, and they were setting panels for their tip-up concrete. So that construction project is well underway, and good to see another nice addition to the community. CAO Gowdy and myself had an opportunity to attend the Mid-Sized Cities Mayor and CAO Caucus in Okotoks. The keynote speaker was Dan Gaynor, who was very interesting and spoke on leadership. And as I said there, had some interesting input from some of the other leaders from across the province regarding cannabis management strategies. On that particular one, I would suggest that Lacombe is perhaps a little ahead of the curve and has some different approaches than what some outline. I think that ours are certainly reflective of the community and tend to be a little more common sense oriented, I would suggest. But it was interesting to hear the differences in any event. We also discussed some policing issues and, of course, the ever-present MSI funding issue questions. McHappy Day, not that Ronald McDonald needs the plug, but I will say this was an interesting event. I've had an opportunity to help out a few times in the past. They do support local charities as well as the McDonald's charities nationally. So if anybody knows of any charities that would like to be on the list, it's just a matter of contacting them, and the owner decides where he would like the local funds to be funneled. So I suggest you may take advantage of that. Commissioning ceremony, I'll bob down to the bottom here. The mayor for a day announcements had a very fun day going around the schools and passing those out. There were some very exciting youngsters that will be arriving here Thursday this week to go through the entire day or half day spent with us here, and hopefully you're able to make it for a portion of it to the council members. Really, if you haven't had the opportunity in the past, it is rather interesting to say the least. And along with that was the school participation cleanup certificates that were handed out, and Samuel Claire and myself had a lot of fun doing that as well. So that is my report. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So what at Terrace Ridge was supported? I guess I kind of missed.
I believe it was for the playground equipment. I think that was actually, I understand that was the second year that they were involved in that particular one, so it must be obviously on the radar to the owner. perhaps an expansion. That was just what I was told. Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I can actually answer that question. It isn't to do with the playground. I think there was some miscommunication there, but they do have another outdoor space that they're looking at enhancing. They have that outdoor classroom, for example. So there's some areas around there that they're looking towards to put that money to.
Very good. It's nice to go here because the owner of the place didn't even know that, so that's great. CAO Gowdy, you want to go through your report?
So typically the CAO report comes at a month end, the second meeting in the month. So I don't have one today. But if there's any questions, I could.
That's precisely what I was asking, just to put you on the hot seat. Any questions for our CAO this time? If not, that's it for reports then. We could have somebody move that they be accepted as information. Councillor Gullickson, thank you. And I see that there we had no notices of motion that were brought forward. Yeah, someone said, unless I missed something, I think that is it until our in-camera session. If somebody would care to make a motion. Councillor Hoekstra?
So moved.
Thank
To
you.
move into camera.
Do you want to take a short break before?